know we're not all in the same room, but I love to just clap, make a little noise, everyone have fun.
I'm right with you, man. I'm right with you. We got to make this as fun as possible, surviving this pandemic.
Exactly.
I lit a fire to try to set a literary mood, you know. I mean, we're doing all we can.
I'm very jealous of that fire. It looks very warm and toasty.
It's good.
You want to start us off by reading a little bit from the book?
Yeah, sure. Seems like a good way to start. I know that the readings over Zoom are not like being, you know, by a fireside chat, but I'll try to read just this brief little part that I think hopefully works okay as an excerpt. Shall I start?
Please.
All right. This is from chapter 1, and it finds us in the middle of the first day of rehearsal for a production of a play. As the run-through began, I discovered that by reciting the lines of this warrior, Hotspur, I could feel a breeze blowing through me, ventilating the seething anger that was scalding my organs and literally hurting me. My stomach was twisted in pain all the time, but there was a rhythm in the words that soothed. Long speeches fell out of my mouth without thought. The beat of the play sunk into my guts and surged like cool water splashing against my fury, easing the burning of my stomach. When a performance is going well, there is no thought. You are not amused at how well you might be acting. There is no you. You don't remember how it went. You have no discerning mind. When my scenes finished, I would sit alert in my chair and listen to the text, watching the other actors. But still, there was no thought. There's no opinion. Then, like lucidly stepping into a hallucination, I would be inside the play again. Sometimes another actor's nervousness, a glint in their eye, a self-conscious hand gesture would almost break the spell. Or I would distract myself and remember the director staring at me with his hard, unflinching beam, and I would fall out for a second, noticing the real world. But quickly, the beat of the words would carry me off again. The first 2.5 hours of the play went by like a subway train that forgot to stop. We arrived at my death scene, and I was foaming at the mouth, challenging Prince Hal to meet his doom, the heat and energy of Shakespeare's language filling me with strength. I could feel hate, and for the first time in my life, understood how an all-encompassing rage could feel good. It was clear and unconflicted. In those moments, I was living deep inside the metaphor of the play, intuiting the text instinctively. For a moment, there was no Mercury Hotel, no divorce, no children, no shame. It was only the ideas, the rhythm, the language, and my breath, all happening spontaneously. The outside world tends to celebrate the most trivial, superficial aspects of an actor's life, lifting their personality to a plastic godlike status. But the actual joy of acting lies in the absence of personality, in taking on and inhabiting the accoutrements of another's being, where they are from, their accent, their clothes, their background. You realize that every element of your own personality is malleable. You can do it. You can wear the skin of another human being, and yet still you are you. This in its own small way feels profound because it illustrates that none of the things you point to as identity are intrinsic. You are something far more mysterious than a person who is funny, who is angry, who is hurt, who likes Marlboro cigarettes, who's Presbyterian, who is a playboy, who is Nigerian, who is a Real Madrid fan. All of it is dressing. Of course, acting felt good to me. Inside the play, it felt possible that I was not a person defined by adultery or by his unloving parents or by his lies or his failure as a father. It is possible that I could be defined by something else. When I was younger and first started performing professionally, all I ever wanted was to be true, to be genuine. But now, having passed 30, I wasn't sure what those words meant. I turned down a fantastic role once because I felt I would be a phony if I spoke with an English accent, as if the cadence of my natural voice was not affectation, as if there was anything at all about me, the casual unbrushed hair, the old blue jeans, the t-shirt worn thin, all deftly presenting the impression of a person who was not concerned with his appearance. That none of that was not affected, and it was real. Affectation is very real. My big break in the movies came with the role of a stuttering 17-year-old delinquent in a 1920s juvenile home. Everyone thought that was me. But the real, so to speak, me was obviously an actor who practiced the stutter, stepped into the makeup trailer, and then walked back out again. The real me was kicked out of drama school because he missed too many voice and speech classes. Later, I did a film adaptation of Chekhov's The Seagull. Fans of the film would come up to me and kiss my face, so grateful I did not actually shoot myself. I learned quickly the power, the absolute nuclear power of the deceit attached to any kind of storytelling. And that'll be my reading for this evening. Thank you for listening. I know it's so hard to hear this. I can't even get my own diction right over a Zoom. I'm supposed to be an actor and I can't even read this. But anyway, thank you for being here.
To hear you read from this book. Again, I absolutely adored this novel. And I'm glad you chose that section to start with, because I wanted to ask, your love of acting, your love of theater really shines in this book. And so, I mean, you're tackling, and you've written so much of your life as well, and you're tackling basically two different art forms in this novel. So what was it like to write about this this art form that you so clearly adore?
Well, I guess I try to give myself permission. You know, the line I would say to myself is, yeah, I'm an old actor, but I'm still a young writer. And that I need to do the old trope, you know, to write what you know. That if I were to ever have something to offer a reader, that if I could actually force myself to write about acting, I might have something to offer. You know, my secret goal, you know, was to do for the actor what Melville did for the whaler. You know, to tell our story, to tell our tale. What's it like to be on that whaling ship and, you know, chase down the great white whale? So I don't know. I've loved acting so much my whole life, and at its core, acting is a celebration of writing, right? So once you do it for a while, you start to be hypnotized by that flame of authorship, of what is the writer's mind, what is the writer's goal, and to see what might happen if you chase that flame yourself. So yeah, it was fun. It was a dual flame. It was my love of literature, which is at the heart of my love of acting.
And is that how it is for? I mean, because to quote one of your own.
I hate to quote yourself back to you. It's
I believe it. I think it was Virgil. I think it was the character Virgil in the book who talks about taking literature, and in the case of this book, taking Shakespeare and turning it into event, right? Taking the words that were written and turning it into the event of the play. And so that so clearly is what you're doing in this book. But was it for you, was it kind of literature came first? Was it that's where you fell in love with storytelling? Was it originally books?
I don't know. It's too hard to say. They were so combined in my life, the falling in love with words and then immediately wanting to present them to people. I mean, you know, I remember I don't know, was it ninth grade, or we were reading Hamlet. And you know how the teacher forces kids to like read some of it out loud. Well, of course, I was the only one who wanted to, right? That's the ham bone that I am. I'm like, I'll do that. But I remember, you know, reading that quintessence of dust speech, you know, from Hamlet, and somehow the magic of the words and also the magic of saying them out loud and trying to see who paid attention. Could you connect with anybody? Could you translate why you love these words so much to the listener and make it active in their imagination as well? And that's the spell of acting, but it's so connected to whatever the magic of writing is.
Mm-hmm. Finding that rhythm, finding that voice, finding that way, basically, like you're saying, to allow the story to kind of express itself through it. Do you have, like, I mean, because reading about the character in this novel, I feel like I know a lot of different ways of approaching acting, and the rigor and the rehearsal that goes into it. What about writing for you? Is that an art form or a process? Like, do you go over? Do you edit? Do you try to do long freehand writing? Like, how do you approach it?
Well, I guess the truth of the matter is, at my whatever the center of me is an actor, and that I come at everything with what I've learned from acting. So in a way, for me, the typewriter is like a controlled improvisation. You start to hear this voice, the voice of this character, this other, this fictional I, right? And you start riffing on this I, and it's a controlled improv. And I'll riff for a while, and sometimes I'll riff out a good 15 pages of like, this happened, and then I just start to collect it, and you start to shape it and carve it. And I've had the benefit of being in a rehearsal room with Sam Shepard or Tom Stoppard, or really great writers, and I've watched them cut and paste their work, of like figuring out not that line, not that word, this word, comma goes there, pause goes there, and you see the rigor and discipline with which a great writer really tries to use language, and it's hypnotic. And so that's kind of what I do in a lot of ways. And that's very, very similar to what Julie Delpy and I would do when we were working on writing the Before trilogy, is we do these improvs, so to speak, where we're riffing in character, writing it down, and then shaping it. No, not that, but that one line was great, man. What would be a better response to that one line? And so I kind of took that process and into my own private imagination. The first draft of this novel was, at least twice as long, if not maybe 3 times as long. And then I started carving it up.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the book, and I'm sure you probably left a lot of great stuff on the floor. But the way the way I read it, there were just so many beautiful conversations that still managed to move the plot along and kind of get at the philosophies I feel like that you were trying to convey. And so the sharpness of the book was, a lot of the writing is in the editing, like you're saying, right? With the cutting.
This book is, I've never had an experience like this. The architecture of the novel came to me first. I knew for some reason that I really needed to write a fictional work on acting. That's what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, you know what? The theater is intrinsically more interesting to me than cinema. I knew I wanted, it's older, it's more ancient, there's more discipline, there's more craft. In a lot of ways, if I were to write a novel about cinema, I would write about a director, I guess. But there's been so much of that. And yet I couldn't really find a first-person account of a stage actor that was, there's a handful of them out there, but it's not a well-worn trail. And I thought, well, wow, wouldn't that be cool if I could do that? And I thought it broke so clearly into 5 chapters for me. First day of rehearsal, dress rehearsal, opening night, a 2-show Wednesday in the middle of the run, and closing night. I have like a little, it's on one page, like 5 chapters, boom, 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 yeah. And then I took a notebook for Act 1, a notebook for 2, 3, 4, and 5, and started figuring out what ideas would work inside each chapter. And so the architecture was really my guide, and it really helped me with the whole act of cutting.
Yeah, because you found these 5 things to start from and then build off of there. Yeah. I have to say, it's funny to hear you talk about Melville and Whalers and then actors, that where the place my mind immediately went was, I think about midway through the book, you describe being rolled out in total darkness on the staircase. Right. You're just gripping the small handle that you put there. And it was these little touches that really made one feel like you were watching these actors backstage. But I have to ask, so why Shakespeare? And Henry IV, you yourself as an actor starred in Henry IV, I believe it was in 2003. What was it about Henry IV that made you want to take these words that got turned into a play and turn them back into a novel?
Well, there's something about when you perform Shakespeare where you feel like you're a part of, for lack of a better word, like a tide, this tide that's gone back and forth over hundreds of years. You're getting a laugh on a joke that's 400 years old. So many people have gotten a laugh on so many audiences, from all over the world, and you feel yourself kind of hitching your imagination onto brains that are deceased. and you feel the future of the laugh. Will this play be done again? Where will it be done next? Who will wear this costume next? You feel yourself as a part of something really ancient, and that's more interesting to me than acting in a movie that's a hit on 1 April and one specific year. You're attaching yourself to something larger. At first, I really wanted to avoid the chaos of confusion between, when you're writing about acting, there's an easy thing where people could think that it's a memoir, to get confused by that. And so I really tried to write about King Lear. I've seen a handful of productions of King Lear, but I'd never done it, and I didn't know anything about it. I had no intimacy to the writing, and I started bumping into the fact that I love Henry IV, and in a lot of ways, in our introduction, whenever anybody introduces the novel, for some reason my brain, it trivializes it, because not that she trivialized it. It's just whenever you try to put the bullet points of what a novel is. Yeah, I'm never super interested in the plot or the narrative. I really wanted to write about the healing power of performance that I've had in a lot of my life. Emotions are always in our way. You're having a conversation with your father and you find yourself angry for some reason about the Cowboys game when you don't want to be, or your mom brings up the election and you end up yelling at her about something else. Your emotions are in your way. And acting is this one place where emotions are of use. They're of service. You can use your emotional life to make sense out of yourself and make sense out of a story that then is not self-indulgent. It's actually in service to people who want to be told the story, and they want to see their own lives in it, and they want your emotional truth. And that was where the novel, I thought, could live. And I needed to write about a play I knew something about. And I knew that the joke is that, yes, it's about a young guy who's like struggling with his failed marriage and he can't make sense out of his own life. But in truth, he was broken long before the marriage, and he was never going to be in a healthy relationship until he healed himself. And there's something about Prince Hal, King Henry IV, Falstaff, Hotspur, these male archetype personas, that was really what I wanted William to be going through. That was his journey. And the event of the book is probably this healing that happens with his father. And so it has nothing to do with the trope of what the novel's about. The heart of the novel has to do with forgiving yourself, accepting yourself, and how the performance led to that. And so Henry IV just did it for me. It fit it. And also, there's something about, I don't know if you go through this or if other people go through this, but the sense of wanting to see yourself as the good guy in life. No sooner does an event happen to us than we try to tell the story in a way where we're the good guy, right? And there was something about playing Hotspur when I played it, and the realization that as much as I tried to see myself as the good guy, I wanted to transmit my love of Hotspur to the audience, and it didn't matter. They hated me, and I couldn't. They were happy when I died, and there was something about that when I played it felt profound, of this kind of dying effort to be understood, and knowing that it's never going to work, and that sometimes you're the bad guy.
And sometimes people are going to love you for being the bad guy as well.
Exactly.
Let me ask the kind of just talking about like the issues that the main character go through, right? And just hearing you touch on that, obviously there's such great dialogue in this book. There's so many great relationships. And one thing that kind of really stood out, we are watching somebody kind of struggle with masculinity and struggle with an idea of masculinity that maybe they've been sold or they're trying to project. And it felt like it was something that the book kind of came back to at different moments. Was that all intentional?
Yeah, I mean, that's the struggle between Hal and Hotspur. That's the struggle. Again, you know, I'm trying to make art out of issues I'm trying to explore. I don't have any knowledge or insight, but I can try to explore them. And one of the things that has haunted me my adult life is there's something about masculinity and how it's defined and sold to us as a young person, and then how we're asked to grow up and change, that is reminiscent to me with, it's a jump that I'm making, but anger. I never know what is the right way for anger to manifest. You're constantly told the wrong way for anger to manifest. Don't do that. Don't hold it in. Don't let it out. So what am I supposed to do with it? What am I supposed to do with this feeling that is eroding at me, with all this anger that I feel? I'm not supposed to hold it in. I'm not supposed to let it out. What do I do with it? In a lot of ways, I feel the same about the mystery of whatever that thing is that is masculinity, which I think lives in women. I think it lives, it's this id inside of us that I don't know the right way for it to manifest. And there's something beautiful about Shakespeare's Henry IV that really explores the partier, you know, the part of Prince Hal that is just drinking and partying and raging and carousing and bohemian, and the part of him that longs for honor and dignity and for responsibility, and the only kind of real happiness that comes through accountability. You know, one of my favorite lines in the play is the king says, "Sons, what things you are." And I remember sitting backstage and hearing that line. And, you know, all of us, boys, men, whatever you want to call us, grow up as sons. And a lot of us feel that we let down our fathers. A lot of us feel that we let down our children. What is the right way for us to manifest ourselves? And that play explores that masculine theme in a way that I always found compelling. And so, yes, I'm hunting for the same questions and same answers that you are. I don't have them, but I mean, I don't have the answers. I just have some questions, you know?
Yeah, as we all do, lots of questions. That said, there is a lot of wisdom in this book. I'm not going to let you downplay yourself that much. There's a lot of, I feel like, great advice. I think there's sometimes contradictory advice, but what is life if not that? And I do feel like there is some wisdom in the pages. And it, you know, Rules for a Night kind of came to mind, almost this way of giving advice, right? But using kind of these different characters in these different ways to lend advice. And one of the lines that I took from it was, "Have a boring life and make your art thrilling." I'm just going to say it again. Have a boring life and make your art thrilling. And at the time, William thinks basically, fuck that.
Yeah.
How does Ethan, the writer, the actor, how does Ethan of now, how do you take that advice?
It's just the greatest advice anybody ever gave me. And yeah, I create a situation where William is not available to hear that advice. You know, I mean, I think as young people, we want to be thrilling. We think our lives need to be exciting for us to create great art. Life is always exciting. That's the joke. You don't have to manufacture excitement. The sun comes up every day. It's a goddamn miracle, you know? And when you lose sight of that and you think your actions, you know, it's a classic thing of what happens with so many people in drug abuse, is that they feel like they have to light themselves on fire to feel yourself. And yeah, you will feel yourself if you light yourself on fire, but you can also feel yourself by watching the sunrise, you know? And I think that part of what I find fascinating about when you're really beat up, when you're really down on your luck, right? And what's beautiful about it is you start to open up because you know you don't have any answers. And that's where I placed William, is just kind of a broken vessel. So everybody's coming him with different advice. And then your job becomes to handle it and absorb it. I've been fascinated by that, where this happened to me. I've had two great mentors give me completely contradictory advice. You know? And I'm like, I admire both these people, and they're saying the opposite thing. What do I do with that? You're like, oh, right, it's my life. This is my job to figure this out. And there is something about stop trying to make your life interesting and let it be interesting. You know, that's how you let your art come out, is by getting out of the way. Life does it all for you.
And you can just put yourself out there. Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question? You said two incredible conflicting like pieces of advice. Could you share those with us?
Well, there's so many, you know, I mean, that's the title of the book for me, A Bright Ray of Darkness. It's just a conflicting, one of my favorite lines in the book is something that my son once said, which was, it just blew me away when it happened. He said, snow would be perfect if only it was warm. You know, and I was like, that's it. That's what I'm talking about. You know, and a lot of it, I tried to embody it. It wasn't literal. I try to embody it in the two characters of the actor who plays the king, who William admires, and the director. And the director at the end of the novel calls him to thank him for not missing a show and how important that is. And then the actor that he admires the most said, next time, skip a show. You're not that important. You know, and it's like, and I've had that kind of thing in my life the whole time. Well, wait, which one is it?
Drop the bow, but drop the bow, but you got to figure it out yourself. Drop the bow.
You got to figure it out.
Yeah, and you got to, you know, it's knowing what to pick up and what to leave. I just while we're on the topic of Shakespeare, and then folks, just a quick reminder: you can leave your questions for Ethan in the Q&A, and I'll be sure to select a few. I'm sure they are brilliant. It's clear in the novel, but just from talking to you now, that you greatly love this play and you greatly enjoy the character Hotspur. Is there another Shakespearean character that Ethan the actor would love to play?
Yeah, you know, now my brain is going to all those great father parts. You know, Prospero. There's something about these ancient texts. I remember, I'm lucky enough I once got to direct a Sam Shepard play, and you know, Shepard projects this kind of mythos that he has, but Shepard the man was such a student of other writers. One of the real great blessings of getting to meet him was to see what a student he was. I once ran into him at a Barnes and Noble in the how to learn Spanish section. And, you know, he wanted to be able to read Lorca in Spanish, you know, and once you see that side of him and hear him talk about the Greek plays and these strong female characters that he would see in these Greek plays, and how he was hunting to let his own writing grow up. I don't know if there's so much I'm hungry for as a performer, because I mean, acting is a really dangerous profession, because what you don't know when you're a young actor is that you're so much more castable as a kid. Most of the art that is made, movies and TV shows, is made for young people. And so most of the parts are going to young people. You don't know that when you hit 50, the parts shrink. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is the ones that exist are far more interesting. You know, if you can manage to claim one. I mean, you know, I got to play John Brown this year. You know, I mean, I can't. I mean, Jack Nicholson wants to play John Brown. Who doesn't want to play John Brown? Paul Newman wished he played John Brown. Orson Welles wished he played John Brown. I mean, any white man worth their salt knows that was the role of a lifetime. And so you get to play these parts, and so I can't just spit out who they are, but through reading and you know, I want to play all those Beckett parts. I'd love to do some of those Greek plays. I long to do a new play. And I pray that people start, writing some parts for some old guys. He can't have all the parts. I got to get some of them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's just numbers. Because you brought it up, one last quick one to slide in before we go to the audience, because you are, and again, this kind of gets into, we're talking about theater, we're talking about acting, we're talking about writing novels, fiction. You yourself are starring in a TV show that you just mentioned. You're playing John Brown, The Good Lord Bird by James McBride. It's based on a book. It's now a hit television series. Like, how do you wrap your head around, one, all the different iterations that story has kind of gone through to get to where you are now playing that character? And how did that project come about?
Well, that project is mysterious to me because it never in my life, never in my adult life has a book knocked me out like The Good Lord Bird did. I sat on my bed and I laughed. I just couldn't stop laughing. And I felt the political charge of the novel and the fact that somebody was making me laugh over a subject matter as intense and serious as this one. And it was doing two things at once. I remember the feeling that I had when I finished it. You ever have that? I closed the book and I was staring at it. I was like, what is this feeling I'm having? Because it was the normal melancholy that you get when you finish something you love, which is just sad. Like, you just kind of said, like, I'll never be able to return to this moment where I was having this love affair with this book. And I was like, but it's more than that. What is it? And I realized it was just bald-faced envy that somebody had expressed themselves with such originality, with such seriousness. It was just fucking beautiful. And I admired James McBride so much. I felt like this guy just lapped Mark Twain. He's my age, and he's writing about America the way it needs to be written about. And so then the next step is you pass through the envy and you think, well, I want to share this book with people. And then you get into how we started this conversation of what I think the essence of an actor's life is, which is sharing great writing.
Yeah. Taking something you see on the page and saying, hey, look.
And, hey, everybody, check this line out. Isn't this funny? This will slay you.
That's fantastic. Also, a quick shout out to Books Are Magic, a bookstore that I know you visit, Ethan. You can also buy The Good Lord Bird through them. All right, I'm going to get this question from Christina, which I absolutely loved. I was thinking about this too. With the Broadway and global theater shutdown, a bright ray of darkness truly is a bit of brightness in the darkness as it illuminates the thrills and energies behind a Broadway show. How conscious were you, Ethan, of celebrating live theater, particularly in the midst of a shutdown, or was this part of the novel essentially finished pre-pandemic?
I think, I don't know if you feel this way, Isaac, but like, the mystery of writing is that it could always be better. There's once, when I was younger and I first started writing, I had this desire to share. Like, look, I can do this. I can do this. Check it out. Isn't it good? And then you get a little older and you realize, well, it's not that good. I mean, it's cool that you did it and everything, but it's not that good, dude. And that is both wisdom and fear, like, which is it? Because if all of us said that, there'd be no new books in the bookstore and nothing to speak for our time. And I do think there's something about, I've been working on this book for a long time. I've wanted to write about acting for a long time. And I've had notes on this novel for years and years. And there was something about the pandemic that made it clear to me it was time to let go of this novel. It was a great time to say, hey, the theater is beautiful. The theater is something else. It's not just movies, that there is a value in us being together. I had an incredible, right before the pandemic, I did True West on Broadway, and it was Paul Dano and I, and there were nights that were so alive, I mean, I'm talking a lot about Sam tonight, but they asked Shepard who his influences as a writer are, and he said the rodeo. Could you write something that felt as alive as being at a rodeo? And sometimes when things were really grooving with Paul, I felt like I was at a rodeo. And I want people to remember how valuable being together is. and why the theater is such a magical art form. And this book is one way to do it.
Yeah, well, and that's what that person followed up with. They said that it was an incredibly uplifting read for them because they miss going to the theater, attending.
That's cool. That means a lot to me.
Yeah. Here's a question from Jonathan Shipley. How does your creative process change between writing a screenplay and writing a novel? Do you think there are any advantages, disadvantages to both?
Well, yeah, there are. I mean, screenplays generally are like plans for a party. You know, it's like if you're having a wedding, you're like, okay, the band's going to play at this time, and then this is going to happen, and then we're going to do the vows, and then we're going to have the cake. And so screenplay writing, it is writing. And the best, you know, when Paul Schrader writes a screenplay, when I did First Reform, that screenplay is a work of art. I mean, it truly is. There are other very fine screenplays I worked on that I wouldn't say were finished works of art. They were plans for a party. They were an invitation to a collaboration. Mm-hmm. And I think my joke to myself always is the thing I love about acting is collaboration. And the thing I love about writing is not collaborating, not having to listen to him and her and listen to all that. Just let me say what I really want to say. Stop telling me to fix it.
You're the ultimate director.
Yeah, you get to be the costume designer. You get to be the music supervisor. You know, there's something. Also, let's face it. I think a lot of my passion for writing prose comes from how hurtful it is to shop screenplays. It's anybody who's written a screenplay. You go hat in hand to these. You need money to get it made, right? And there's all these people who are there to tell you why it's a bad idea and why it's never going to make money. And so you end up, I've written a bunch of screenplays that have never been made. And that's really disheartening because sometimes you spend a lot of time on them. There's a couple screenplays I've spent years of my life on that I really believe in, and other people just don't like them. Doesn't, you know, and then you're left with kind of nothing because it can't really be read. Whereas if you write it in prose, at least you can make it a book and you can give a reader a private experience. It's not a communal experience. And I also think literature allows for a depth of insight into privacy, meaning sexuality is super difficult to explore in film because it doesn't matter how tasteful you are. If you're really going to deal with sexuality in film, clothes have to come off. And as soon as clothes come off, it kind of becomes tacky. Or it becomes something else, you know? The inner life. I mean, anybody who's had a, you know, whether it's when you watch a kid get lit on fire by Little Women or Huck Finn or Catch in the Rye or whatever, it's a private experience that lends credibility to your own dopey, weird thoughts that you thought you were alone with. And all of a sudden you're not alone with, and all of a sudden now they're not demons, they're friends, you know?
There are things you have in common with somebody
else.
Yeah,
with other people.
You just touched on absolutely far and away one of my favorite aspects of books. I think there's like a quote from History Boys or something, yeah, about a hand coming out and grabbing yours, and all of a sudden you feel less alone. That's 100% it. There's the seriousness of it, but this is a wonderful question from Mario. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of playfulness in art? How do you balance playfulness and discipline?
That's a great question.
Isn't it?
I mean, that is the question. I mean, I think one of the things that we all like, when I think about acting, for example, I think about Jack Nicholson or Jeff Bridges or, Meryl Streep. I remember seeing Meryl Streep in Mother Courage, a Brecht play, like a deep, substantive Brecht play. And she was out there goofing around. I mean, she was having a ball. And you could see her teasing the other actors on stage, and you could see her twisting this actor's ear and tossing off these huge speeches. And she was at play. And it's like if you watch Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or, you're seeing someone not being serious. And when that playfulness intersects with a lifelong dedication to craft, right? Boom, then dynamite comes out. I mean, I think our great authors, you know, Toni Morrison or whatever, she's having fun at the typewriter. And her lifelong dedication to her craft has now all become instinct. I mean, she has good habits, you know, like your teachers tell you. She has great work habits. And so that's the goal, right? You want to get yourself to a place where you're so knowledgeable about your craft that you can fuck it all off.
that you're that good. And also, and it feels good to get that laugh, which again is another, that moment in the book where you talk about what it feels like to win over that explosion of laughter. All right, we're running out of time here. I'm gonna do this last question from Eric, because I think this is another great part of this book as well. There are a lot of the books, things that you write are about relationships and the psyche of the characters. A lot of books are a celebration of life. Your books, is there conscious decision to have so many philosophical elements as well? Because you do in this book and in other books that you've written kind of try to tackle the big questions.
Well, this is the place for it, right? I mean, they're always telling you, don't bore us at Thanksgiving dinner with your philosophy, right? I mean, well, where's the place for it when you can hit people at home in the privacy of their own mind, and you can share your own mind and ask those questions? I mean, that's what I love about literature. You know, James McBride's new book, Deacon King Kong or whatever, he's spinning a yarn, but inside the yarn, all these weird philosophical questions. What does happen when you die? What does happen to a memory that's lost that seemed to change your life, but you don't even remember it? What happens? Issues of class and pain and suffering stop being political and they become personal. And that's what literature can do. And so, yeah, my brain just gravitates. I love that kind of talk. I love it when I read a book when they're engaging me in some way that engages you differently than the NFL or, you know, a reality TV show, or, you know, it's something that's aspiring to be in dialogue with you about something that is thought-provoking. So I long for it.